my experience, when I was attending like a traditional Sunday morning service, I had a difficult time connecting with other people, and it became more of a consumeristic type of thing. And you just like apply a little Jesus to your life.
Yep.
And it didn't seem like biblically what Jesus called his followers to do and to be. Welcome to Reconcile, where we seek to connect the controversial, the supernatural, and the ordinary to the deeper truths in the Bible. Please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you're notified of new episodes. My name is Aaron, and joining me today is Dusty, and we're going to be talking about house church, or as our church calls it, Microchurch. Dusty is the pastor of Sojourn Alliance Church here in Boise, Idaho, that currently consists of 5 microchurches throughout the Treasure Valley. So, Dusty, what is a microchurch?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of terms and stuff that are thrown out there these days and stuff. And the way to think about microchurch, at least the way I would describe it, it's just a spiritual family on mission together. That's like really a basic level thing. The idea of a microchurch is just a simple form of following the ways of Jesus, taking out all the complications, all the programs. If you could just boil down like, hey, here's how a handful of families get together, we follow Jesus together, we work on God's mission together, just in that simple form, that's kind of how we describe a microchurch. And instead of trying to grow and get bigger and bigger, more complicated, we would just rather say, hey, let's just replicate these small, simple forms of following Jesus and invite other people into and multiply that out. And really at the heart of it, it's an idea of, hey, how do we reach an area with the gospel? We like to use the term gospel saturation. So if you can just imagine God just kind of pouring out water in an area, where the water gets to every nook and cranny. That's kind of what we envision our microchurches being, just like, hey, this one's going to get in this little spot. This one's getting in this nook and cranny. This one's getting here. We talk a lot about neighborhoods and networks of how we want to just share the gospel in those spots, just as normal relationships happen. Making disciples in everyday environments is really what a lot of it's about.
What do those look like specifically? Like, I know they're different types, but like, just give us an example of what someone might expect if they were.
Yeah, I mean, like most people think of church, and they envision a building, okay, and then they envision a Sunday morning service, for example, and that's kind of their concept of church. You got this building, you go in there. Sometimes Sunday morning is typically when us North Americans gather, and you'll go in there. You'll do some sort of singing. There'll be announcements. They'll pass an offering plate around. Some dude will get up behind the microphone and talk about the Bible, closing prayer, and you're out the door. Microchurch is a little bit different because it's really about what was the lifestyle of Jesus, and what environments did he hang out with people. And we're trying to kind of replicate that more. So it's really less about a Sunday service per se, although most of our microchurches meet on Sundays. And for us, a meeting looks a little bit different. So we usually try to gather around a meal. So we share a meal together, often Pollock style. And then we'll often pray for each other, talk about things that we're given praise for, like here's what God's doing in our lives. And then we'll study the Bible. This is really based on the Bible and stuff. And so we'll often go through books of the Bible together. Each of the microchurches will kind of, we try to stay on the same page, although, there'd be some kind of freedom and stuff as well. But yeah, that's kind of, it's kind of like if you were to imagine kind of a mid-sized family getting together, like aunts and uncles and getting together, and just living out the ways of Jesus. That's kind of how we envision what a microchurch is. And so when they get together, like a family, like whatever a family does, that's kind of what we do.
Yeah.
We eat together, we pray together, we go on vacation together, we serve together. We do, a number of serving things in our neighborhoods, depending on who we're trying to reach out to. Just a lot of things, like just kind of picture a big spiritual family with spiritual aunts and uncles that are doing stuff. Kids are often involved in there, and so it's not kind of like that tight service where no one says a word. I mean, there's a lot of talking, dialogue, laughing, sometimes crying, stuff that you'd have there.
Yeah. How many do you think are our average amount of people in these small groups?
Yeah, so we like them to be a bit more in the mid-size range, and so your typical small group, they probably has 6 to 8 people in it. If you're familiar with the small group movement in North America, usually have that, and so we like to be a bit more mid-size. We want to be kind of 15 to 50.
Okay.
There's this social dynamic that happens when you get in groups of people. Like, for example, like, we're having a conversation because there's just two of us. And so the dynamic is a little bit different. If there was all of a sudden 30 people in this room, okay, it would automatically be a little bit different because you have a different feel and stuff. And so we like that kind of mid-range community because it really gives opportunity for dialogue. We do some smaller, like 3 to 5 men with men, women with women that you can be more accountable with. For example, it's hard to be accountable with 50 people.
Yeah.
But you can when there's just 3 to 5 people and stuff. And then once a month we get kind of all the microchurches together and we'll do kind of more traditional stuff like singing together, some teaching from up front. But the mid-size is really great for conversation and dialogue and, hey, what do you think about this? And just kind of bringing people to participate is really one of the main goals. We don't want just people sitting there, just watching up on a stage. We want you to participate. It's actually proven you learn better when you participate. And that's kind of what you see Jesus do. He's always having conversations, asking questions, getting dialogue back and forth. And he kind of is able to kind of dispense truth in that as well. And so really we're just trying to live out, if Jesus were to be walking around us, how would he engage people? Where would he hang out? What kind of stuff would he do? So.
Yeah, for ours, we started going, it's probably been 3 months or I don't know how long it's been, but around there. And we meet at someone's house at 10:30 in the morning, and then we all bring food like a potluck style type of thing. And this is ours, and other ones can be different. And there's probably 1, 2, 3, 4 families, I think, and in our group, there's a lot of younger,
a lot of kids.
A lot of kids.
Yeah.
There's probably 12 or 14 or something. I don't know. There's a
probably
lot
more kids than adults.
Yeah, there's definitely more.
A lot of our
more kids
have that.
And that's just the kind of the group that we're in. Actually, our kids are older, so several of the families have very young, toddlers even, and they're just there in the middle of the service and sometimes it's loud, sometimes it's not, and it's just fine. You just kind of like that's kind of life. I love we sit with a meal, bring food, and spend probably about an hour just talking at the first. I mean, it's just great. And people are just kind of seem like they're dying for some kind of connection, real connection.
Real connection, absolutely.
And then you talk about the real things of life, and during those times, those are great. And then have we talk about things that praises for the week and prayer and go over, we read a section that I think everybody in all the microchurches are typically going over. And just kind of go kind of a Bible study from there. And then afterwards we kind of sit and hang and talk for a little bit, and then we're out of there. So kind of ends up being a longer day than a normal church service that I'm used to.
Yes, it's not the hour and 15-minute dry. You're out of there. It's just a couple hours often.
Yeah, and you can't just hide in the back kind of thing. That's the great thing about it. So So I guess how do you see the strengths or weaknesses compared and differences, I guess, compared to like a traditional service? And what would you call a traditional service? I like to use the word institutional church.
Yeah.
But what's a term?
Well, I mean, there's a couple different names. Like you got institutional church. A lot of times we'll use prevailing model.
Okay.
Because sometimes people are like, institution, that's institution or bad.
Yeah.
Like we're not trying to bash other forms of following Jesus. Yeah. We're just trying to be faithful in what we feel God's calling us to do. Really, that's kind of our heart. It's like, hey, man, if you want to follow Jesus that way, like I'm not the judge of the whole world. Be like, oh, this is the only way that's right. Which sometimes house churches can kind of get that vibe of we're the only ones who are really Christians and stuff.
True Christians. Yeah.
The one true ones and stuff. And I kind of find that a little bit of the cultish side, right?
Yeah.
We're the only ones drink this water or drink this Kool-Aid and stuff like that. So we're just saying, hey, you can do whatever you want. Here's how we're trying to live out the ways of Jesus and follow him and stuff. And so we usually use the kind of term prevailing model, just the model that's gone before us and stuff. And it's pretty common all throughout North America. I've done a lot of traveling overseas. That's actually where I've gotten some of the stuff that we're using is I do trips really all over Asia. I've been to India a bunch of times, Cambodia a couple of times, Philippines, and in a lot of those places, they don't have the money to fund an operation like ours. And so sometimes they're like always, trying to trying to do that. But the ones who just seem to really grow and stuff are just like, hey, we're just going to be this simple form. So the advantages, cost. You don't need a big building for it. You don't need a band. You don't need all these programs. It's just like, hey, we're just going to live simply. As followers of Jesus, you do need people with some vision and be like, hey, I'm gonna engage with the people around me. And so like kind of at the simple heart of it is, hey, how do we train and equip people to hang out in the places they're already in? Okay, if you're hanging out in sports or areas, if you're hanging out in this club, just the regular everyday parts of life. Okay, God calls us to go and make disciples, right? That's Jesus's command, and I really take serious that Jesus is my Lord. Okay, Lord just means master. So if Jesus is the master, like he probably knew how to do things.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna try to look at him and be like, okay, so Jesus is the master. He's the example. Like they even called him teacher. Okay, that's the Hebrew word rabbi, right? It just means teacher, but teacher just means like, hey, we're supposed to do what our teacher does. And so part of what he says is like, hey, you're gonna make disciples, and a lot of people, end up going to churches and stuff like that, and they don't ever make any disciples.
Yeah.
So they actually miss out on the very thing that Jesus told them to do. And often it's the select few who are paid staff, and they're doing all this stuff, and people will kind of come and consume the spiritual goods and services, right? And so we're like, hey, let's try setting up things a little bit different, to where, hey, you got to come. You're going to participate. Okay, that might turn some people off.
Yeah,
that's okay. This is kind of the thing that God's definitely put on my heart, and the leaders and elders connect with Sojourn and stuff. Of like, hey, we want people to participate. We want to do what Jesus told us to do. Right? It's the Great Commission. Go make disciples. Okay, which means we're going to have the posture of going. Okay, and going is just wherever your feet take you. Right? If you're like, well, where's your program? Our program is the people with feet, right? And they go and make disciples. So wherever you're going, hey. So we've had a lot of people, at least personally, like even for us, we've connected with often families at our kids' schools. We've connected with families, kind of connected with our sports. Our kids do a lot of sports and stuff, a lot of basketball. One of our kids played tennis, so we're trying to connect in those places that we're just at, without making another program. Also, one of the things that we really are passionate about is connecting in those spaces where people don't want to be, and stuff. We've done a lot of work kind of with the homeless community, some with the refugee community, stuff like that. Because we're like, if Jesus were to come and hang out in the Treasure Valley, where would he hang out with? Based on what we read in the scriptures, he was hanging out with people didn't want to hang out with a lot of times. Okay, and I'm not saying those people are bad and like, I'm lowering myself to hang out with them, but we just want to hang out with people. Just where we're at, and stuff. And that's, I would say that's kind of some of the advantages. Some of the disadvantages is, we try to have an environment of not tons of control. So we do want some boundaries, right? We do want some guardrails, like, hey, we're going to study God's word. Like that is an authority on our lives. Okay. We do have elders, right? Who are, and I would say they're kind of more like spiritual parents than typically people think of, kind of often a board, and they make all these decisions and stuff. And we make some decisions, financially, things like that. We have to. But also, we want them to be spiritual parents. Like, hey, they're kind of the leaders. They're like the lead discipler makers. That's kind of how we have our leadership function, not in their business acumen or things like that. But it's like, hey, these guys are working for making disciples, and they're a good example. So like an elder is like someone you could just look at and be like, hey, if you walked and shadowed them, you'd probably learn to be a pretty good disciple of Jesus by their actions and stuff. And so those are our advantages. Like I said, disadvantages, sometimes we're not super organized, right? And some of that is intentional. Like we want to have some level of organization. We put out text to all of our groups and all that kind of stuff. People, but really kind of place that on the microchurch leaders to be like, hey, you're helping lead discipleship for your microchurch.
Even the microchurch leaders and microchurches report to to their master, to Jesus. We're all just trying to be obedient to Jesus and as our master, and that's a great thing. Is because we can all read His Word, and it really points to Him in that direction. So.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things kind of with that is we believe in interdependent leadership. Yeah, what that means is I kind of, I guess, carry the label of pastor for the group. Can't say I love it, to be honest with you. Because I'm not like somehow better than someone else. Sometimes people come to Dusty, pray for me. Your prayers are better somehow. I'm like, that's I don't really see that in the Word. Is we're all called to be
just part of the body.
Part of the body, right? So we all have the same access to Jesus. I'm more than willing to pray for you. My prayer's not better than your prayer necessarily, right? And so so what I can kind of bring, because I'm a paid staff person that helps kind of facilitate, organize stuff. But really, like our other elders and stuff, like we want to have mutual submission towards one another. We want to work together, kind of like a team. Like you said, we're a body. Yeah. We're not an institutional organization per se, although there's some characteristics that are similar. But really want to function that way of like, hey, we're I'm not better than other people, and I have a special in with God that you might not be able to have, and this kind of weird, strange hierarchy that you can kind of get some weird things that happen. Which I think is especially problematic. In kind of the North American church world these days, where there's lots of money involved, there's scandals involved. We're really trying to just be kind of a simple group of very regular people who are just trying to follow Jesus, inviting other people into following Jesus in that kind of way, without all that other stuff that gets involved with churches a lot of times.
Yeah, I've been going to a traditional, prevailing model type of church basically my whole life. And again, models in and of themselves are not good or bad.
Correct. Absolutely.
It's just a model is to accomplish a task.
Yeah.
And so if a model works good, it doesn't mean that it is guaranteed to work or it's going to. It is a effective way to accomplish a task. And in my experience, when I was attending like a traditional Sunday morning service, I had a difficult time connecting with other people, like on a kind of a deeper spiritual level,
right?
And feeling like I was part of the body instead of just kind of maintaining this system.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that everybody's going to experience the same thing that I did. I just felt like we weren't a lot of times being the body, which I think that's the purpose and the goal for the traditional church models as well. I mean, that's the purpose of that. Hey, they have a person coming, and the pastors speak, and everyone's come to listen to the word and be encouraged and built up or whatever to go out and do that,
Right. Yeah.
And I kind of noticed that just didn't seem to accomplish that goal, maybe like it did before, and it became more of a just like a consumeristic type of thing. Like I came, I got that was kind of encouraging. All right. And you just like apply a little Jesus to your life.
Yeah.
And and it was like, oh, that was great. All right, out the door,
Right.
And it didn't seem like biblically like what Jesus called his followers to do and to be.
Yeah.
And again, a model can't make you do anything.
Right.
But I just thought that the model that, I didn't seem to work very well for me. And I felt very disconnected. And when I'm serving, it's basically to serve this, we call it kind of the beast sometimes, It's
Right.
like feeding the beast.
Right.
It has to be done. And sometimes people get swallowed up by the beast just to make sure the beast survives, and does that. And so I think a lot of people have had that experience. And I kind of felt like I was always fighting against that type of model for so long. And it is so established that type of model does not want to be changed. And the people who are on that, they kind of have, this is their model.
Right. This is what we do.
This is what we do. And so I had several times where I was like, this is not working for me. Like, this doesn't seem, I'm not getting, and it's not getting out of like, hey, come feed me, type of thing. But it seemed like there was just, if you were coming to be fed, it was like just spiritual milk constantly. It was never kind of growing and, hey, let's do this together. Let's come along, one another and live this life together.
Yeah.
And so it was very difficult. And so what I did was just like either I tried to try to change things, and then after realizing that didn't not going to happen,
Yeah.
then I'm like, well, I don't know if I want to be part of the church in that sense,
Right.
And even and I can straight up say that the way that the word church is used is not biblical.
Not helpful.
Let's not say that that's like, because that is one of the core features. I've talked to a lot of pastors and said, just changing your vocabulary of using the word church as it's used in the Bible, I think could be the beginning of trying to change that.
Yeah.
And saying that when we go past this building, that is not the church. It has never been the church. People will say, oh, it's a temple, and use this. No, the biblical idea and definition of church has never been a building.
Right.
Or an institution or anything like that. It is the body of believers, those who believe in Jesus and who come together and, basically act as the body of Jesus.
Yeah.
It basically turns people to thinking that this institution or that this building is the church. And so now I just come and I go to church. Hey, when are you going to come to church? Instead of being the church.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they just kind of add it to like a spiritual checklist.
Yeah.
I went to church.
Yep.
Check.
Yeah.
My Bible, check.
Yeah.
Like I said, and all those things aren't bad in of themselves.
Yeah.
But how you view it, I think you made a really important distinction there is that church is people.
Yeah.
It's not a building, right? It's the people, and sometimes those people get together and meet up so they can build each other up, spur one another on to good works as one of the things, to equip the saints to do the works of ministry. That's what Ephesians 4 says. So there's all kinds of ways of what we're supposed to do when we do get together. But the meeting is not the only thing. Really, if we're gonna live out, like I was just reading this morning in my Bible time and stuff of Jesus talking. He's like, hey, if you love me, you're gonna obey my commands, and this is how you're gonna know I and the Father are one. Is by living this out and stuff. And when we kind of put everything into a once a week meeting, we're really missing out on the fullness of what it looks like to be the body. And that's one thing I think the microchurch is attempting to do.
Yeah.
Right? Is like, hey, what would it look like if we were just a simple group of people getting together sometimes? But there's also this like gathered part of being the church, but there's also a scattered part, right? Like when you walk out the door, did you like all of a sudden stop being church? Yeah. Like you're still this people.
Yeah.
And sometimes people's together, sometimes they're not, but you still should be doing God's works. You should still be following Jesus. You still should be faithful, but we made it a once a week meeting and then forgot like, well, what about Monday through Saturday?
Are we really being transformed? Like, are we being transformed, or are we just kind of applying biblical knowledge, to our lives?
Yes.
And so if we have this model of, so you go from this model of the institutional church or the prevailing model, and you have one mouth and 1,000 ears, and so that's like how the body. It's like there's not a lot of other body things happening. Right. Now, to maintain that system, there are, like maybe greeters, there may be this,
right,
Sunday school teachers, and maybe those types of things.
Yeah.
But it's not like you're put in a position to actually, utilize your gifts.
Right.
It's like, hey, I have these gifts and whatever. It's like, well, just sit and listen, and then maybe you can kind of go
find their seat.
Yeah.
Okay? And not against it being an usher, right?
Yeah.
Like if you have a building and stuff, you might need to help someone find a seat. But that's probably not the spiritual epitome of Jesus' call when he said, "Go make disciples." Oh.
And I don't think that, the prevailing model, that's not their ultimate goal either.
No.
But it seems like because, I don't know why that is. We set up the system, it's like more of an entertainment type of thing, more of a consumer-based thing. And then people can kind of just come in, sit in the back, which that's never been the intention of church. Now, of being the church. But if you need that for a time, like, hey, I just want to check this stuff out. But that's not where you're just kind of going, all right, I'm just like, you've got to make a decision sometime in your life. It's not just ultimately like, I'm just going to listen to this forever and then, that's pretty good stuff. And it really, there's a decision where you have to make a decision to change how you're going to live your life and who your master is, going to be.
Yeah.
And and die to yourself and really do that. And hey, we're not going to ever be really good at it.
Right.
We're going to be horrible at
Yeah.
it. But that's the whole point, is there is a decision saying, okay, I know that me having control of my life is not what's best. God knows what's best. He has, saved me. He has redeemed me. And my whole life now is an outpouring of gratitude. And
how the Bible defines worship.
yeah.
It doesn't define it just as singing songs.
Singing songs, yeah.
I mean,
totally.
that is a form of worship.
Yeah,
but
totally.
really, how you describe that's a great definition of
Yeah.
worship. I think some of the issues is how a lot of the prevailing model set up. It's how you think of what is maturity. Like what's the end goal? Is the end goal, I'm just going to give you more Bible information.
Yeah.
Okay, which I think kind of by default, that's how a lot of
North
I
American
grew up
churches,
in a church.
yeah.
My dad was a pastor. My dad was a good pastor, and so I was very fortunate in that that he was able to do a lot of good things and stuff. And so, but like I saw kind of this overall thing of like, hey, we're just trying to get more Bible information into you, right?
Yeah.
So Sunday school, more Bible information. Preaching, more Bible information. This Bible study, more Bible information. And I'm a Bible nerd,
Yeah.
and so I've appreciated that at some levels. But when the Bible talks about, here's the goal is we're supposed to, Ephesians 4 talks about, hey, equip the saints to the work of the ministry, and everyone's supposed to end up in maturity. Okay, so our idea of maturity, I think, is sometimes a bit flawed, because if maturity equals more Bible information, you're going to produce someone who knows about the Bible, but isn't necessarily like Jesus.
Yeah.
Right? And in the Bible, if you learn it, you'll actually be like, oh, well, I'm supposed to be, like you mentioned, transformed. I'm supposed to be transformed into the image of Christ. Well, how do I do that? And I think a lot of it is about maturity is not knowing more information about the Bible, although that's helpful. I've never known a mature Christian who didn't know the Bible well.
Yeah.
But the other piece is maturity is really about responsibility. It's about developing like, hey, how am I going to help someone else walk in their faith, learn the ways of Jesus, and I'm going to take responsibility for helping them get there. Okay, it's really a lot about like a person who has a kid, right? If you just leave a kid acting like a 3-year-old, and now he's 23, you'd be like, wait a second, you can't. You're 23. You can't act like a 3-year-old anymore. Okay.
Yeah.
And stuff. And so a parent's job is like, well, when they're 23, man, they need to learn how to hold down a job, care for themselves, do hygiene, spend their money correctly, right? All that stuff. Okay. And in the church family, what we're supposed to do is we're supposed to help spiritual infants. Like, hey, here's what it looks like to grow in the faith. Here's how it looks like to pray. Here's what it looks like to understand your spiritual giftings. Here's what it looks like to be a witness around you, right? And so we're supposed to equip with that, but it takes someone acting like a spiritual parent and saying like, here, let me walk you and show you how to do it. Let me model that for you.
Yeah.
Just like in 2 Timothy 2:2, where Paul's telling Timothy like, hey, find some faithful dudes, teach them so they can teach others, right? Like that's what biblical maturity looks like is about, hey, how do I take spiritual ownership? Okay. And part of the reason why is that's a lot harder. Why prevailing models don't do that is it's a lot harder to control.
Yeah.
Right. Like, man, I can't micromanage everything, and stuff. And there is some safety in having organizational structure. Okay. There is, right.
Oh yeah.
And so, but there's also some limiting things where it's like, well, you're the only one deemed worthy that can do this aspect.
Yeah.
And stuff. And that can really hinder people. So then I'm an usher. I guess that's just as high as I can go in this system. And it's like, well, I mean,
climb the corporate ladder.
Yeah. We kind of have, church corporate ladders in a way.
Yeah.
Oh, only the really good ones are the ones on stage. Only really, and so we're trying to bring about and like, oh, no, everyone has gifts and callings.
Yeah.
Everyone has people that God has placed in their lives to reach out to and love and share Christ with.
Yeah.
Everyone has these giftings and abilities, and we want you to make I believe this is like a 100% belief. Every person can be a disciple maker. Every person.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, not everyone can be a head of a corporation or stuff like that. Every single person who's a follower of Jesus can help make other followers of Jesus at a simple level, and that's what He's commanded us and asked us to do. And so that's what that's really like part of my heart is like, I want to see that happen. I want to see people believe that, like, I can make disciples with the people I'm at, and I'm going to work and learn the skills to do that, right? And that's kind of how we have our whole setup. And so we have different environments that help you do that. Like I said, sometimes it's men with men. Sometimes it's that microchurch gathering where we got 15 to 50. Sometimes we've done some bigger stuff. You know, Jesus did stuff with crowds. You know, I'm fine with doing barbecues and outreach events, you know, that kind of stuff. Like I'm not anti doing any of those things. But Jesus spent a lot more time, you know, with the 3, with the 12, with this group of people that just kind of followed him around. That was made up of the 12 disciples and some ladies, and he sent out 70 to do his work. That's where Jesus spent most of his time. And so that's kind of how I'm trying to spend most of my time, just trying to see a similar thing.
Yeah. So we have, you know, some limitations maybe to the model of the traditional, traditional model. And so now we kind of try to follow more of a biblical approach to the home churches. And so once we do that, everything's perfectly fine, and really there's no issues, right? Like as long as we have a different model, that's all that matters, right?
Yeah. And of course, I mean, like the thing is anything deals with people.
Yeah. And people are messy.
And people are messy. And actually, in a way, it can get more messy in the microchurch world because there's no place to hide.
Exactly.
You can't slip on the other side of...
Or go to another church and go, I'm out of here.
That's full of 1,000 people and stuff. And so sometimes you just have to get a little bit messy and stuff like that. But, I mean, read the Gospels.
Yeah.
Jesus is constantly in messes.
Yeah.
Jesus is, often being like, guys, how long do I got to be with you? Right? Like he says things like that because they're not getting it and stuff. But he was in that proximity. You know, a lot of microchurches just like, hey, let's just get in proximity because you can't live out the one another's without being in proximity to one another. I mean, that's the only way you can do it. You know, if you can't do those kind of one another's that the Bible describes in a large crowd. I mean, you can do some, but you can't do a lot of them, you know? And it's a lot of like when rocks hit each other, right? That's how you smooth out the edges. And, and so that's kind of expected. Like sometimes, as trying to lead this, sometimes it'd be easier to be like, oh man, it'd be way easier just to slip in, preach a sermon. I love to preach and stuff. Preach a sermon, out the door, plan all week, and preach another one next Sunday. But I just don't read Jesus doing that kind of stuff. I'm like, okay, I can't do that. Okay, another thing that's very limiting, kind of with microchurch, it's pretty slow. Like my capacity to hang out with people, there's just not that many people I can hang out with and actually know and stuff. And so, but I've made a commitment. Like I'm constantly discipling some guys. Like I'm constantly, since we started Sojourn, 2010-ish, I've always, almost without fail, had a couple of guys that I'm just spending time with, praying with, teaching the Bible, doing stuff together, and I'm going to continue to do that. I think we need people that we're helping grow along, and I also have people who are mentors to me. So I'm constantly finding older, more spiritually mature, often pastors or ministry leaders that are investing in me as well. And I seek them out because I don't want to tell anyone connected with our church to do something I'm not willing to do myself. And I see that a lot. Oh yeah, do this, and they're not willing to do it themselves. And so I'm like, okay, I got to get my hands dirty. I'm the one passing out flyers a lot of times. I'll go do the prayer walks. Because I'm like, that's just, I'm not going to ask you to do something that I'm not willing to do myself and stuff. And sometimes it's hard. But really, I mean, I'm just simply trying to follow Jesus. So it's not like it's, like the one thing that really drew me into this is, I was on staff at a couple different churches, actually some really good churches I've been on staff with and has some phenomenal kind of senior pastors, we would call them, that helped me, really kind of become the guy I am now, really helped mold me and stuff. And so I had the benefit of watching them. But in the midst of that, like I learned some things of like the way of Jesus, and this is Jesus's words, right? He says things like, hey, come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden. I'll give you rest. Take my yoke. The burden's easy and light. And there was times where I'm like, oh man, my burden is not easy and light. Like, am I actually taking on Jesus's way,
Yeah.
or am I doing some other kind of way and stuff? And that really led me, there was this kind of one time in my life where I was leading student ministry. I was leading a college ministry. I was leading a small group. I was on the board. I was on one of the elders. And I had 3 sons at the time, okay? 3 of my 5, right? I only had 3 of them then. And I remember looking at my week, and there was this neighbor across the street who I was trying to love and to be a light for. And I remember I was looking at my week. I'm like, I got one night, and I either got to choose my kids or my neighbor who needs Christ. And I was like, this is kind of silly. How can I just like live and I don't want to be like lazy either, right? I don't want to say, well, just be lazy and that's how you be a good Christian. I'm all for working hard and stuff, but I'm like, you got to have this margin where it's like, I can do the rhythms of Jesus, work hard for him. But also that part of that is like, man, I want, if I were to meet someone who doesn't know Jesus, and if they were to look at my life and be like, your life is crazy.
Yeah.
Your life's no good. I'd be like, that is sad.
Yeah.
Right? Like, how can I witness to someone if they look at my life and be like, I would never want your life?
Yeah.
To me, that is not a good testimony. Instead, I want people to be like, man, Dusty, you got great margin in your life. You still work hard, but you still got time for your family. And so I was like, how do I try to set up something that's simple that still doesn't like go the lazy route of like, well, I'm just not going to do anything and we'll just do a service once a week. I'm like I'm an all-in guy. Yeah. Like, it's like, man, if you're not all in, like, what are you even doing? Yeah. Like Jesus said, give me your whole life, right? If you want to find your life, you're going to lose your life. But if you lose your life, you're going to find your life. So I'm like, I want to live in that. And so I was trying to figure out like, hey, how do I do this lifestyle thing? How do I just live life where ministry? So I do a lot of basketball coaching, right? Ministry is coaching basketball because I can be a light there. Okay. Ministry is when I go over here. Okay. Wherever your feet take you. That's how I would like to describe your ministry. It's like, well, where your feet at? You're on ministry, right? You don't kind of compartmentalize. Well, now I'm doing church stuff. Now I'm not doing church stuff. It's like, I'm a Jesus person. Everything is Jesus. Yeah. And so that's how I want to live it out. And so we've tried to develop rhythms that help kind of foster that, right? Yeah. So we kind of teach things like, hey, have a balance of up, in, and out. Okay, you got to have this balance. Spend up time with God. Okay, spend in time with other believers. Spend out time with those who don't know Jesus, and just live in that balance and tension. And then there's a tension there because sometimes like, oh man, I'm really doing this aspect really well, and sometimes like, oh, I haven't done this in too long. I've been overkill on this area and stuff, and so you just need to rebalance it. Like, look at Jesus. He had great rhythm. He was, hey guys, we need to go to the mountains and pray and rest. Okay, let's get our hands dirty here. There's people here. There's thousands and they need food. What are we gonna do to feed them? Right? Like all those kind of things of Jesus that he taught his disciples. And so just like how do I walk out those kind of ideas?
I think in both models you can kind of have like a bait and switch type of thing.
Okay.
So you have this. Hey, we're just come here. It's going to be real easy. Just sit in the back. Yeah. Just whatever, kind of thing. And then you try to like push people. Hey, a little bit more. And you're like, but you told me that this was just kind of sit and relax, and there wasn't anything. And same thing with even with the microchurch, you could have that same thing. Hey, we're just doing a Bible study, and we're just kind of having a meal together. And there's a how do you balance that at times? Because you do want to just invite people in. You're not saying, hey, your life will be changed. Yeah. But there is a component of that where people, once they check this out, like they should think that they should be come in and say, we are trying to be transformed by Jesus together. And live life. This is not a Sunday morning, just a thing. Right. And people in microchurch can get stuck with that. People in traditional model can get stuck with that. It's just a Sunday morning thing instead of like what you're talking about, where it's just your life is changed. And all this group is to help each other on this path.
Just an environment to help foster that. Yeah. I think some of it, we want to create space. Like really what we do and what Jesus did is he created different spaces and environments to ask questions and help move you along into following Christ. But I do think like we need to be upfront. So we talk about, we call it Journey 180 at Sojourn. It's really just, okay, what did Jesus just do? Okay, Journey 180 is basically the idea of transformation, right? 180 turn, right? You're going that direction, now you're going that direction. We believe that's kind of how the Bible describes repentance, right? What Jesus calls us to. And so we kind of use 4 parts of this and stuff. And these are some of my words based on what I think Jesus is trying to do. But the first thing we want to do is call people. Okay, like Jesus, come follow me, I'll make you fishers of men. Like he was right up front with them. Okay, do they know what that meant?
Yeah.
Not really.
Yeah.
Not really, but he was at least calling them, inviting them into disciple making. You know, I think sometimes even when we call people to big words like salvation and stuff like that, you know, like Jesus' call was always about discipleship, right? Like because sometimes we can be called to be saved, and then think I'll just do whatever I want now.
Yeah, I did the prayer. I'm good.
Yeah, I punched my ticket to heaven. I'm good. Jesus doesn't seem to do that.
Yeah.
Okay, although he does call us to repentance, all that kind of stuff. Like the Bible uses the word salvation, and stuff. But how Jesus talks about it is he's like, hey, come follow me. Okay, so there's this call to follow Jesus, right? So we want to give that call out, right?
Yeah.
Really, once you accept that call, then you can start doing the things. So if you haven't accepted that call to follow Jesus, like we'll just kind of keep asking that you do. You know, hey, don't follow the religiousness of stuff. Follow Jesus. Okay, so I'm going to call you to follow Jesus. Okay, next thing is Jesus did is then he gathered community, right? He formed community. So you get the call, and then we want to put you in community. Like, so this would be like, hey, if you know, what would it look like to be part of Sojourn? Like, we're going to call you to follow Jesus. Okay, and sometimes being part of that community is part of it. Sometimes people belong before they believe, right?
Yeah.
And so it's not like, hey, you got to have this rigid thing, this rigid 4-step plan. This is just kind of things we've noticed.
Yeah, there's no formula.
Yeah,
in any of these aspects. That's
it's not an exact formula, but you can see like, hey, Jesus was pretty intentional though.
Yeah.
Like he had kind of a plan. It seemed like, right?
Yeah.
So we want to call you. Hey, we want to get you involved in community because we really think transformation. We've been talking about that a couple times. Transformation takes place in community. Like that's where it's formed. Almost everything Jesus did was relational. It's like the incubator, the context of having the character and competencies of Jesus happens in community, right? And this is why, you know, why we just don't go to the mountains and start a monastery, or just do something like, hey, just go and live in a cave by yourself.
Yeah,
you just can't do the things of Jesus that way, right? Because you need those balance of relationships. You need that up and out part. You know, you can do the up part anywhere, but out, kind of working with people who don't know Jesus, you have to be around people who don't know Jesus. Okay, a lot of Christians don't know people who don't know Jesus, and don't make any effort to, which is kind of sad because he said go, like the very thing he said was go make disciples. And so anyway, so we kind of work from that idea from call, plug you in community, and then you don't want to just stay there. We want you to contribute. Okay, we're this body where God has given you gifts and skills and abilities, and we want you to help discover what those are and start putting those in place. Okay, and so we're supposed to contribute to God's work. You know, one of the prayers that Jesus has in Luke chapter 2 is the harvest is plentiful, the workers are few. Pray for more workers. Okay, we need contributors, and not just to sit there consume spiritual goods and services, but like, hey, what is God asking you to do?
Yeah.
Who's He asking you to reach out to? Hey, how can you love this person better? Hey, how can you serve this group of people over here? Hey, how can you make disciples in this spot? Hey, what has God given you to do those kind of things? What skills, abilities, giftings, right? Like what are all those things? Okay, and the last part we would say, so you got call, community, contribute, and then we would say create. Okay, go make disciples. Hey, we're going to help train you and give you tools. But if you really want to work out the purposes that God has for you, it's going to be in disciple making. And I would say that's true for everyone, right? You know, just sitting here learning and listening is not all that God has for you.
Yeah.
There's more. Like there's more opportunity. Everyone can be a disciple maker. Like I said, 100% conviction. Every person can if they want to walk that stuff out.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
And that's even a gift because it's not like God needs us to do anything.
Exactly.
It's the fact that He allows you, and it's not a, all right, I got all this work to do because God doesn't want to do it, you know?
Right, yeah, God's lazy. He can't do it himself. He's like,
Yeah.
no, I'm inviting you to do the most exciting, and honestly, like I can look at the things that have been like the most amazing. Okay, obviously you got things like marriage, having kids. I mean, super fulfilling, amazing things like that.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, I was in India this one time, and we're in this house, and there's this village. No believers there in the history of that village that we know of, and I got to share about Jesus there, and got to see the first people in that village ever come to faith.
Cool.
And I mean that's gonna go down to the grave as like one of the highlights of my life.
Yeah. That's
like I'm just getting to do the things that Jesus told me to do.
Yeah, because there's so much joy in those things. It's like, it's not, when you look at it as work, then it's work. But it's
Work
like,
and duty
wait a
and-
minute, this is just an outflow of gratitude of what God has
Right
done in my
there.
life and has
Yes.
saved me, and that He allows me to do this because I get so much joy. Joy is just so much different than just happiness. Hey, happiness, it's just
Right.
like this thing
Right.
overflowing, or it's just like you can't even contain, and you're like, wow, this is I get to do this. Like I get
Yes.
this opportunity to lead someone to experience the same thing, or
Right.
to love somebody and see them transformed or whatever.
Yeah.
So,
See, and I think part of our problem a lot of times as North Americans is you can't bear witness to what you have not experienced.
yeah.
And if you have not experienced like the joy
Mm-hmm.
of what it looks like to have your sins forgiven, to be in right
Mhm.
relationship with God, like that to me is the most important thing in my life.
Yeah.
It's the best thing in my life.
Yeah.
And so I want to be able to share that and tell others about it. But if you've never really experienced that and you've just gone to church,
Mm-hmm.
just gone, I guess that song was okay. Oh, I guess that message was like if you haven't encountered the living God, it's not even going to make sense to you,
Mm-hmm.
right? But when you encounter the living God in the person of Jesus, and where He makes you anew, He gives you that unspeakable joy the Bible talks, that peace that passes all understanding, where it's like, oh man, this is so unbelievable, this is amazing. Does everyone know about this?
Yeah.
Right? Like you don't know about,
Yeah.
and it just like does something in us, like and that's really is what we want to see Microchurch, kind of that expression of the church, kind of live out, is like, hey, you just do that in the places where you hang out normally.
Yeah.
And what happens as you disciple people that way, really the church emerges out of that, right? So you don't got to like start a new microchurch.
Yeah.
Start planting the seeds of the gospel
Yeah.
wherever you are, and stuff will kind of come to the surface, and eventually you might do all the things of the church. You might study God's word. You might take communion. You might baptize people. That kind of stuff will flow out of what it looks like to make disciples. The Bible never says to go plant churches.
Yeah.
It's actually not in the Bible. And we talk about it, as American churches all the time. And I'm not anti-planting churches.
Yeah.
But what Jesus said to do, go make disciples. Because the thing is if you make disciples, you'll always, always, always get the church. You always get the body of Christ. If you try to start a church, try to start an organization, you may or may not get disciples.
Yeah.
And so, just to live that out and just be like, hey, I'm just gonna, like, I've dedicated my life. Like, this is the goal of my life. I just want to be a disciple maker. And so I'm gonna hang out and try to hang out with some guys all the time.
Yeah.
Just over the years, like, hey, it'll be these couple. Hopefully they'll get discipled. It'll be a couple more. Hopefully they'll get discipled. It'll be a couple more. Hopefully some of those guys that I disciple will disciple others.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Disciples that make disciples is kind of what we're trying to do. And so we're trying to have this rhythm of life in the microchurch world that helps foster that.
Yeah.
So it's far beyond just like getting together on Sunday, even though it looks a bit different. Because what some people try to do is like, oh, well, I'm gonna take all we do in big church, and I'm just gonna do it in a house, and that's the pure form.
Yeah.
I'm not super interested in doing that.
No.
I'm interested in like, just what does it look like at the core to follow the ways of Jesus? And I mean, if you follow Jesus around in the Bible, what does he do? He's just like eating with people, having conversations with people, like just doing normal stuff. I mean, like he does do miracles, right? Which I mean, I think God still does. I still believe he does. Like he does some of those kind of things as a testimony, and I believe those things can happen. But most of what he's doing, he's just sharing meals with people. Zacchaeus, I'm going to come over to your house. What do? They get there, they're having a party, right? Hey, can you throw a party? You sure can. Throw a barbecue in your neighborhood. right? Well, what does the program of Sojourn looks like? Well, when you throw a party in your neighborhood,
Yeah.
that's the kingdom expanding, right? Hopefully, eventually, you'll need to get to the good news of Jesus,
Yeah.
right? It's not like, oh, I'm just going to throw a party and equate that to the good news, because it's not.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a part of it. It might
Yeah.
be the bridge, playing sports with people, doing hobbies with people, just doing normal things.
Just loving your neighbor.
Loving your neighbor as some smart person said that once, right?
Yeah.
It's just trying to live out doing the things that Jesus told us to do.
So if somebody wanted to, they're interested in this, and it's not like a, poaching people from traditional church, hey, if you're being fed there, you're growing, you're part of, a community, great. We want everybody to be a part of something like that. And if that works for you, that's great. But if you're not, and you're looking for something, you're like, I've wanted to always either connect with other believers and like, let's walk this journey together.
Right.
And, be part of a microchurch, So what do you think that they should do?
Yeah. I mean, so first off, like I hang out with a bunch of pastors all the time. Like literally, actually, before we did this podcast, pretty much every Thursday, I pray with other pastors. And most of their churches look completely different than mine. Most are kind of more prevailing model. And I'll just tell you what, like I love those guys. I love the work they're doing. I fully endorse them. Like I said, I'm not trying to poach anyone. But you kind of question, like usually it's funny because sometimes I'll get kind of the question like, hey, when can I come to your service?
Yeah.
Okay. A lot of times I'll be like, hey, let's back that up a bit. Let's meet for coffee.
Yeah.
That's how I usually would answer that question, because like I want to get to know you. I want to see if even what we're doing is a good fit for you. Because like I think there's different people at different times of their life that might be better suited for something a bit more of a traditional route and stuff. I mean, I love what we're doing. I wouldn't change it for anything really. But I want to have conversation with people and just chat like, hey, what are you trying to find? What are you looking for? What does your spirituality look like? What's your faith in Jesus like? And I'll explain to you like, well, here's how we do it. Because some people are not going to necessarily like what we do.
Yeah.
And so I actually like to start with a conversation with that. And I would encourage, people who are part of Sojourn, like, I don't know if the first thing I would do would be like, hey, yeah, come on a Sunday. I mean, you can, like, it's not bad, but I mean, I would probably give them a little warning, like, hey, this looks a little bit different, right? Like if you're just expecting to kind of sit there like a fly on the wall, that's kind of not what we really do. We want to engage and talk and converse about deep truths and about, what we're thankful for and what we're praying for and stuff like that. And so, but I would say, man, have a conversation.
Well, so in the monthly gatherings, so the one time a month is that all the microchurches come together and meet in an actual building and, it looks more like a traditional, there. But so if you were to just come on something like that, it would be very different than a microchurch kind of experience. So, and if they don't know you or somebody else, then, I'll put some links in the description below, like to click on, to be able to find, hey, this. But then if and maybe that just through contacting, through you or the other alliances or the, networks that that Sojourn is a part of and could find other microchurches. It doesn't have to be just with Sojourn as well. And maybe that someone from a group could meet and just like chat, or they could invite you. Some people are totally fine with that. Like, just say, hey, come on Sunday morning. This is kind of what to expect. Bring some food, don't bring food, whatever. And we're gonna have some time. We're gonna sit and talk, and maybe that's too intimidating for people. Like they're like used to sitting in the back seats and whatever, and then going like, okay, and then if I don't like that, how do I get out of this?
Get out of here. I can't because there's not as many people.
And so some people that is definitely more difficult. We just walked in. We were, we loved it. Like from the first week with we were part of our microchurch, and it worked perfectly fine in that aspect.
I think like if you're one of those listeners who are kind of like, man, I've done the church thing, like I said, and no knock of that kind of traditional route and stuff. But if you're, because I think God's Spirit is stirring in a number of different people, being like, hey, there's kind of more to this. I know it. Like deep in my core, like there's got to be something more to that. This would be a great place to kind of check out and stuff. And I mean, you can go to our website, sojournalliance.com. You can click on, there's some contact stuff, which I'll probably eventually get to see, because we don't have a big staff or anything. We have kind of a couple of part-time lady admins and stuff, because we just don't do a lot of organizational stuff like that. And so, and kind of with that, I mean, you're welcome to kind of jump in and join one of our microchurches. They meet at a variety of times, kind of all throughout the Treasure Valley and stuff right now. One of them is connected with the rescue mission and stuff as well. One of our elders, Craig, works down there. And so really, we also connect with an organization called the Syndicate. So there's other churches kind of doing a similar thing to us. So there's like 3 or 4 other churches that are doing this kind of microchurch world thing, and we connect fairly regular with those guys and do some trainings and stuff like that. And so there's a lot of ways. We don't really see, like the traditional entry point to enter into the church is usually a Sunday morning service.
Yep.
Okay, and you could call me and figure it out. But like I said, I would probably almost without doubt be like, hey, we should meet first.
Yeah, and if I were inviting people, I would probably want them to come to the microchurch, because that's what you're really going to be experiencing.
Yes.
The once a month thing is more of like a traditional. If you're trying something different other than that, then you probably don't want to do that. But that might be an entryway where you could kind of get to know a little. All right, kind of see there's not too many crazy people here.
Right. They didn't come with their tinfoil hats on and some stuff like that. Yes. So anyway, with these different intro points, some people get the entry point of like just a kind of a one-on-one meeting. We call them DNA groups. Those are those groups of 3 to 5 men and women. I've had people enter through that. There was this one guy who started meeting me, him, and another guy. Met like that way for 4, 5, 6 months, and then was like, man, I just need to bring my family, be part of what we're doing and stuff as we follow Jesus. So that was his entry.
Yeah.
Some people will come kind of the microchurch door of like, hey, someone invited me to a meal we're gonna have.
Yeah.
A lot of connections happen, because we're very relational. So a lot of things will happen through parties and serving events of like, hey, we did this thing and neighborhood barbecue, and pretty soon you get to know some people. And then like, hey, we meet Sundays and we share a meal and talk about God's word together. Would you want to join us? So there's like kind of these different entry points in there, and stuff. And so, but I do know like I know there's thousands of people sitting out there being like, I just don't want to do kind of the institutional church. Anyway, this is a spot for you.
Yeah.
Really worth exploring and checking out, whether it's ours or, like I said, you can kind of Google the Syndicate Boise .org as well, and find some information there. But really, this is kind of the place. Like the people that kind of find Sojourn as home are people who are kind of like spiritually discontent with their kind of the traditional style of church and stuff. Like I said, not a knock on it. They're just like, I think there's something more.
Yeah, people are all very
relational.
different. People are made very different. Unique. Everyone is unique. So they have different models that seem to speak to them more, and it doesn't make one model better than the other. But it just, there are people fall through the cracks in all the different models.
Right. Yeah. So if you're one of those, that's kind of a number of people who kind of eventually. I mean, that's probably similar to your story a little bit of like, okay, man, I've tried this, like it's okay, like the message is good, like it's about Jesus, but man, is like, how am I supposed to live out and do the things that are birthing inside of me? Like I don't feel like it fits in there. I feel like kind of a the square peg in a round hole, like it's just not fitting and stuff. And so if you're kind of that person, like this is definitely the thing to check it out, especially if you're relational. Hey, I want to connect with people. I want to grow in my faith. Like I said, but you're gonna have to get your hands dirty, and it can get messy because hey, we're just dealing with people, and people are flawed, right? We all have our stuff. If my dad always used to say, if you find a perfect church, you better leave because you're gonna ruin it. Right. So that's just kind of the state of how people are. So.
If you want to find out more about Sojourn Alliance or the Syndicate, we'll have those links in there in the description. And just let us know what you think in the comments. So that's it for now. Thanks, Dusty, for joining me. And
it's been great.
For being a part of this microchurch that I'm now part of, and I'm loving it. So
awesome.
Okay.
Thanks, Aaron.
All right, thanks.